Hi there, I'm Jennifer Kirk. You may know me from YouTube and also a number of different television series that have been on a variety of different channels over the years. I've gone through my locomotive collection and I've picked out 5 of the Hornby models, which for me, they're just favourites that persist. Some of them are newer than others, and one in particular goes right back to when I got back into railway modelling straight after university. I'd gone through some fairly dark, depressive times, and that was when I first found the love of building model railways to help me through that period. And the first locomotive actually that I bought was a Hornby ex-Lancashire and Yorkshire Pug. It was number 51222. And I just remember seeing it in a model shop window and falling in love with it. And I went into that model shop, and it was right at the time that I was working in broadcasting. I got a good, well-paying job out of university, and I suddenly realised that I didn't have to ask permission to buy things. And I went into that shop and I bought that locomotive. I've still got it. It's still cherished. It's in my collection. It's now been DCC fitted, and in fact I love those ex-L&Y pugs so much that I've made it my mission to buy every BR running number that's been released, and I've got a few others as well beside. But certainly I still list this as being one of my favourite locomotives of all time. The next locomotive I've chosen is Walter K Wiggum, which is an A4 Pacific. And for me, this locomotive, it's the experimental purple livery which really attracted me to it. Now, A4 Pacifics have been a firm favourite ever since my childhood, and I can still remember the Christmas, probably about 1984, when a second-hand Hornby 00 Silver King arrived, and it was the first tender steam locomotive that I ever owned, and I loved that locomotive, and I still actually have that locomotive. It's in a display cabinet now, but I think that's what kindled my love of A4 Pacifics, and this particular one, in its very eye-catching livery, was one that stood out enough for me that I knew I had to have it in my collection. The next locomotive I've picked, again, this harks back to my time collecting Hornby 00 with my father, and those happy childhood memories of that. And another early arrival in the model railway which my father and I had was a Hornby 00 Duchess of Montrose. So comparatively more recently, when I saw that Hornby had released a super detailed Princess Coronation class in the guise of Duchess of Montrose, in exactly the same livery that old Hornby 00 model had been in, with the BR Early Crest lined green, I knew I had to have it, and I fitted this with a TTS sound decoder to match, and it really is a great performer and certainly a locomotive that I enjoy running to this day. The next locomotive I've picked is the only diesel locomotive in this top 5, but I really do have a soft spot for shunters, and in particular the Class 8 shunters. And the Hornby Super Detailed Class 8 is one which has always been a faultless runner. I've got quite a few of them, but I also have a soft spot for Intercity Executive and Intercity Swallow livery. So when this model was released, again, it's one that I knew that I had to have, and it really does run perfectly, even down to a very, very slow speed here on my model layout. And I do love running it with a rake of Mark 1 coaches in the same livery, and it just crawls around the layout and just really does look the part. So really happy to put this into my top 5 Hornby models. The final locomotive that I've picked is one which I think is a bit of a Marmite locomotive. It's the Q1, the Austerity Q1. And this model, I've heard a lot of people describe it as being incredibly ugly. And I think it's the ugliness of this locomotive that's part of its charm. And it's one of the earlier super detailed models that Hornby brought out when I got back into railway modelling. And I can remember seeing this in the model shop, and I just fell in love with its the fact it was so different, with its lack of a running board, with its strange shaped cladding, a very austere looking locomotive. But the Hornby model actually is a very, very sure-footed performer, and I've just loved running it ever since. I have had this model around 20 years now, and it's testament to how well made it is that it still runs just fine on the layout, although some of the connecting rods have started to wear just a little bit, so there's a bit of slack in its motion. But I think that that waddling that it sometimes does just adds to its charm, and I think it's probably one which I should have more of these in my collection, but for some reason I still only got this one example. But there you go, that's my Hornby top 5 locomotive picks from my own collection.